For more information on today's program, contact Erica Taylor Montgomery at threegirlsmedia.com. Now, back to Punch, Media and Marketing Made Easy, on the Bay Area's business leader, AM 1220 KDOW.
Good morning and welcome back to Punch, Media and Marketing Made Easy on 1220 AM KDOW, the Wall Street Business Network, where we help you punch through the competition and deliver a total knockout with your PR, your marketing, your social media, and so much more. You can visit us online and get the scoop on all of our upcoming shows, as well as find the archives of every show we've done so far, and you can find that at punchmarketing.biz. That's punchmarketing.biz. I'm your host, Erica Taylor Montgomery, and we're talking public relations trends with Aaron Heinrich, who's the managing director at Shift Communications in San Francisco. So, Aaron, before the break, we were talking about social media and how that's really changed the world of public relations. And I want to talk a little bit now about press releases because, as I mentioned earlier in the show, when I first started in my career, the press release was king. And that's really how you got news out about your company. That's how you contacted the media for editorial coverage. And now press releases have really changed in their purpose and function and how they're being used. How have you seen the change in press releases morph over the years in PR?
Well, I think one of the things that's happened is that most companies don't issue as many press releases as they used to. I mean, especially technology companies. I mean, I had clients back in the late 80s that would issue a press release a week every time they made a change to a particular technology that they had.
Yeah.
I don't see too much of that happening anymore. And, you know, one of the things that happened in particular with Shift is that they had developed back in 2006 the social media press release, which took advantage of the fact that even at the time, it was pretty clear that influencers, including both bloggers and media, were looking for something different in a way to be able to look at the press release in a fashion that was going to be allowing them to set up the story a lot easier and to be able to find the information a lot easier. So this whole idea of writing a press release as if it was an actual article that could just be repurposed into print somehow. It's, I think, the biggest change. Now it's more about just get all the facts, lay them out in a way that's easily read, put links in the press release so the reporter can go immediately to the site of the information that they need. So you're doing a lot more work for the reporter, but you're making it easier for them to be able to tell your story.
Absolutely. You know, I think in this day and age, you really have to feed the press a story on a silver platter and make it as easy for them as you possibly can. And I think that's partially a function of how the media has changed over the last several years because of the internet. We've seen tremendous downsizing, particularly in print media, both in magazines and in newspapers, where staffs have just been decimated. And now you have reporters covering, you know, more beats than they ever have before, having to do more work than they ever have before for stories, because there's simply less staff to go around, and still they have to put out the same amount of content. So the easier you can make the job of the reporter, the more likely it is that they're going to appreciate you and want to run with your story.
Oh, absolutely. I think that you hit on a key point here. Most of the folks that are still reporters, whether it be for print or broadcast or even the online entities of any of these, have to do far more work. I know of several of these folks who now not only have to know how to write a print story, but they also have to learn how to shoot and edit video to go with the video part of the story.
Right.
So they're having to do triple and double and triple duty on some of these things. So they're still getting hit up by just as many, if not more, companies trying to get their attention. So the more that we can do to be able to make that easier for them to understand why these stories are important, the better off we're going to be. In fact, I know that there are even some folks out there that work for entities like TechCrunch that have to spend a certain amount of their time actually promoting themselves.
Wow.
As a way to build up more readership and followers. So the more that we can do to help them do that, by creating stories that help draw readers to them, the better off that we're going to be in terms of relationships we have with them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Something else I wanted to discuss, Aaron, is blogging and how that has changed the world of public relations. This goes along with the advent of the internet. And when the internet first started, blogging didn't really exist, but it's come along fairly quickly after the internet really popped up and began. And now it's really a crucial part of PR, both for companies to put out their own blogs and also to achieve editorial coverage on blogs that are out there. How have you seen that changing the industry?
Well, I think when blogs first started, clearly there wasn't anything like Facebook or Twitter. So I think what's happened is that bloggers have had to be much more multidimensional in how they promote their blogs and how they tie back to other blogs. So a blog today can't just sit by itself. You have to have a Twitter feed that goes with it. You have to figure a way to link back to other blogs. So there's much more dynamically involved with blogging today than there was, 10 years ago when a lot of this stuff first happened. So a really skilled blogger has to understand how they can keep doing that. One of the things that we're looking at and pushing very hard at Shift is this whole idea that earned media is no longer just the big hit that you get, say, in a USA Today or a Wall Street Journal. It has far more life beyond that. And it typically had been that what PR people did is they kind of sat on that big hit, and that was about as far as it went. But we're looking at earned media being across the whole social media spectrum, including blogs and Twitter and Facebook and Google Plus and others, and figuring out how we can then extend that life of that big hit beyond that, either through promoted tweets, through these blogs that might also be doing promoted tweets of their own, or Facebook promoted stories or sponsored stories, and being able to really extend the life of a story way beyond what we might normally do relative to that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I think blogs have become an important part of that earned media and editorial media coverage. And, I still have so many clients who sort of poo-poo coverage on blogs, but I really say that it's a great thing to have coverage on blogs. It's something that's going to last far beyond a story that's in a print publication and lives only as long as that print publication lives. It lives online forever with a link back to your website, probably images or a video of your product or service. And it can really give you much more bang for your buck than that single time print publication or even a television broadcast.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I would say to that, as we've talked about, still is being strategic about who those blogs are. We had a client that just by virtue of the title of the blog thought that was critical for his business. And it turns out that blog had one follower. So
wow.
If you really have to look and say, okay, who's following these folks and are they the right audience? Just the same way you would look at any other media outlet. And I think that the thing that becomes somewhat damaging relative to this whole idea of integrating social media into PR is when you do too much of a standalone approach, where you've got folks, let's say, within an agency who do nothing but specialize in social media, but they aren't really integrated into the overall public relations process. Mm-hmm. Now, then you've got too many of these things where you don't know enough about how the rest of the communication effort is working. And so I think it's really critical that you meld all this together and you don't treat it as something separate.
I absolutely agree. And, one of the biggest pitfalls that I think a lot of companies fall into with social media is they'll take somebody who's on their team, might know a little bit about Facebook or Twitter, and say, okay, go ahead and run with our social media marketing. And they don't put any real thought into strategy or a plan when it comes to their social media. And they put their communications in the hands of somebody who truly knows nothing about either public relations strategy, marketing strategy, or even in most cases, social media strategy. And I think it can be entirely damaging and not very helpful to companies that take that route.
Oh, you're absolutely right, Eric. I mean, I think we've seen different examples of that when companies pursue a social media strategy, not really understanding how it might impact the rest of the company, or at least the rest of the company's marketing efforts. So it does have to be a component of a campaign, but it should be integrated with folks that understand or are fully integrated into the rest of the effort as well.
Absolutely. You know, we only have a couple minutes left, but I just wanted to cover extremely quickly what you think about companies putting out their own blogs and if that is critical to PR today.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, the point of it is to develop that one-to-one communication, or at least one to several type of communication that only blogs can do. You know, earlier on in my career when I was working with another agency and we were just starting to get into the blog aspect of this, one of the biggest bloggers was the head of General Motors. And it was at a time when CEOs really weren't doing it. But what it did for him was it put a face to General Motors that wasn't there before. And certainly when Robert Scoble was doing the same thing with Microsoft, he not only became the voice of Microsoft to the developer community and the rest of Microsoft followers, but he also became the voice of those people back into Microsoft. So I think if companies continue to look at this as not as a one-way conversation, but a two-way conversation relative to their blogs, they'll be far better off.
I absolutely agree. Aaron, thank you so much for being show today. Aaron Heinrich is the managing director at Shift Communications San Francisco office, and you can find them at shiftcomm.com, and that's shiftcomm with 2 M's and then .com. You're listening to Punch, Media and Marketing Made Easy on 1220 AM KDOW, the Wall Street Business Network. And when we come back from the break, we're going to change topics and talk about how to use social media more effectively. That's coming up next on 1220 AM KDOW, and we'll be right back after the break.